This is GCSE Physics. This is the particle model of matter, lesson 1, and this one is states of matter. So the objectives are to identify the particle diagrams for the 3 different states of matter and to explain the differences between solids, liquids, and gases. So what is matter? Matter is made up of small particles called atoms. Matter makes up everything, and therefore everything is made up of tiny particles called atoms. Remember to pause at any point if you wish to make any notes. So there are 3 states of matter. Call the different types of matter states, hence the states of matter. We've got solids, liquids, and gases. So what do they look like? The particle models look like this. Now I would urge you to pause the video and sketch this down. So as you can see, the solids are arranged in a regular repeating pattern and they vibrate around their equilibrium position so they don't move. Liquids are quite similar to solids. They're still connected together, but there's a little bit of room for the particles or the atoms to move about, to flow essentially. Gas is completely randomized and random directions, varying degrees of speed. All right, let's move on. There's quite a lot of notes on this one. It's quite wordy. So we can use the idea of particles to explain the properties of solids, liquids, and gases. The strength of bonds between particles is different for all 3 states, and it explains why solids cannot flow and why gases can be compressed. So let's move on. Properties of solids. So the particles in a solid have the following properties. They're close together. They're arranged in a regular pattern. They're held together by strong forces called bonds, and they vibrate in a fixed position. So I'd advise you to pause and make some notes on that one. And I'm going to move on to liquids. So properties of liquids. The particles in liquids are close together, arranged in a random way, and can move around each other. The bonds in a liquid are strong enough to keep the particles close together, but weak enough to let them move around each other. So properties of liquids, they flow and take the shape of their container. They cannot, why they're like this, the particles can move around each other. The other property is they cannot be compressed or squashed. Why they're like this, the particles are close enough together and have no space to move into. There's a good test for this one. If you get a small bottle of water, or a big bottle, 2 litre bottle, it's up to you, fill it up with water to the top, put a lid on it, and then try and squash it. So if you try and squeeze it with your hands, you'll realise that you literally cannot squash it at all. You can even stand on it. I don't advise to stand jumping on it or anything because you might fall over, but you will not be able to squash it, to compress it. All right, let's look at gases. So that might be a diagram for a gas. Do not draw arranged patterns. So, for example, say that was just our space, this little square that I've cornered off. Do not do something like this, because that's an arranged pattern. All right, it has to be random. So, properties of gases. The particles in a gas are far apart, arranged in a random way, and can move quickly in all directions. There are no bonds between the particles in a gas, so they're free to move in any direction. The speeds are random as well. Some particles in a gas will move faster than others. It's kind of a distribution of speeds. A lot of the particles will move at a similar speed, but there'll be some faster ones and there will be some slower ones. So property of gas, they flow and completely fill their container. Why they're like this, the particles can move quickly in all directions. And the second property is they can be compressed or squashed. The particles are far apart and they have space to move into. So you can have gases at low pressure. If you make the container smaller that they're in, you can put the gas under higher pressure. You can move them together, so you can compress them, unlike solids or liquids. So what I want you to do is to pause the video and write solids, liquids, and gases on a sheet of paper, and then put the correct statement into the correct column. So some of these statements are for solids, some of them are for liquids, and some of them are for gases. So I want you to pause the video, line them up in the correct order, and then I'll take you through the answers on the next page in a couple of seconds. Okay? All right, let's move on. So solid, liquid, and gas. So particles are held together by a strong force. Particles are fixed in position, or in a fixed position. Particles have the least amount of energy. Liquid, particles are held together by a moderately weak force. Particles move but are still bonded to each other. Particles don't have the most or least amount of energy. Gas, particles are held together by the weakest force. Particles are free to move around randomly. They have the most energy. And they have lots of space between them. Did not mean to zoom in then. All right. Right, here is this is a 6-mark exam question. The kinetic theory is the umbrella name for all the stuff we've just been doing. Okay. This question might be a 6-marker, but there's a lot of leading stuff given to you in the question itself. So I need to pause anyway, have a go at this, and then I'll put the mark scheme on in a moment, and you can check your answer and look for indicative content to see how much of it you got right. Okay, so in this question you'll be assessed on using good English, organising information clearly, using specialist terms where appropriate. The information in the box is about the properties of solids and gases. So solids have a fixed shape and are difficult to compress. Gases will spread and will fill the entire container and are easy to compress. So use your knowledge of kinetic theory to explain the information given in the box. So you should consider the spacing between the particles, the movement of the individual particles, and the forces between the particles. So some indicative content that you should have written. So solids, particles are close together. So there's no room for particles to move closer, so they're hard / impossible to compress. Vibrate about a fixed point. Strong forces of attraction. The forces becoming repulsive if the particles get closer. I know it's on the GCSE mark scheme, but it's kind of out of the scope of the GCSE, so don't worry about not getting that one. And the particles strongly held together, not free to move around shape. Obviously, you can't write a list like that. You have to write in full sentences. So you could write, the particles are close together, etc. So about gases. So the particles in a gas are far apart. Space between the particles, so they're easy to compress. Random motion. Negligible or small or no forces of attraction. I wouldn't say no. Negligible, yes. But if you say there are very weak forces of attraction, that's good. Spread out in all directions, or I've randomized, that's they move randomly. I imagine them two are pretty tight, closely together. So that's the indicative content, the type of things that you should be talking about, and that's all the stuff that we've talked about previously. So, if you've had your notes while you've done the question, it should be pretty good. If you want to test yourself, what you could do is rewind the video, go back to the question, and then attempt the question without any of your notes, and see if you get, a similar answer, which you should do. Anyway, I hope that helped. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.